Hello again and welcome back to Part 2 of On the Line. I'm Christine Williams. We're now talking about employment and immigration. Joining us, immigration lawyer Sergio Karas with Karas and Associates, and Dr. Joshua Thambaraj, president of the Association of International Physicians and Surgeons of Ontario. Thank you both so much for joining me today. Now, Sergio, I'm going to start with you because I have a broad question overall for you to give an overview of what's going on with this whole employment and immigration. Here's what we hear lately in the news, that Canada is the fastest growing G8 nation population-wise, and this is because of immigration. Yet we see the headlines that there are so many immigrants coming into this country that are well qualified, and yes, they can come in, pass the exams, so it's not as if they're inferior from the point of view of trying to transfer their education here, the proven ones we're talking about. And at times, there just doesn't seem to be the employment. I want you to give us an overview of Canada and employment for the immigrants coming in.
Yes, thank you, Christine. It's always a pleasure to be in your show. It's a very, very, very complicated problem. Mm-hmm. We have a problem because we have a fast-growing population, but we also have an aging population.
Yes.
The aging population is creating a certain set of demands. Those demands include medical care, nursing care. That demand is increasing because a higher percentage of our population is becoming elderly. And we need to address that because it's not only the doctors, but we also have shortages of nurses, shortages of other healthcare professionals, and
skilled labor as well.
Skilled labor. And the problem is that in certain occupations we just don't produce enough graduates to address those shortages. And that's not limited to the medical field. It also goes to engineering, for example. We don't produce enough engineers. We don't produce enough plumbers. We don't produce enough electricians. So population growth, yes, we do have it. Canada is increasing. And the projection is that very soon all of the increase in the labor force in Canada will be as a result of immigration. The second leg of the problem is that not all immigrants are the same and they don't bring the same set of skills to the table. We have immigration that is based on a percentage of skilled workers and a percentage of family class. There is something called the 60-40 split, and 60% of the immigrants that come to Canada are supposedly in the skilled category or in the economic category, if they are business immigrants, and 40% are in the family class, and there's also a very high component of refugees as well. Where we are deficient in the skills is in the percentage that we bring in family class and refugees. The percentage of people who come in the skilled category have very high skills. In fact, the studies have shown that immigrants are more educated than ever in that particular segment.
Yes, they are, but are they getting the jobs to suit their ability?
Unfortunately not.
So the media is correct in those reports?
Unfortunately, people are not getting the jobs that are trained for, but there are a number of factors. Recent reports, for example, and studies have pointed out that lack of ability in English or French, depending where you live, is the number one barrier to getting the right job.
That's good for people to know.
So obviously immigrants who are educated in English and have English as a first language are at a distinct advantage over those who are not. So what we need to do is to retool the system to concentrate on the people who are ready to go, who are ready to work, who don't need language training, who don't need special handling, people whose qualifications and experience are recognized and it's verifiable. Because let's face it, there's quite a bit of fraud too with the credentials. And that's a worldwide problem, not just Canada. So what we need to do really is to concentrate on those issues and to retool the system. And the problem is the following also. There is a third leg of this tripart difficulty that we are facing with immigrants and employment, is people's expectations. That is kind of unquantifiable, but people sometimes have a very rosy picture of Canada.
Sergio, I'm gonna hold you off. Please hold that thought, because this is a major issue I want to address later. But before we go for the break, I want Dr. Thambaraj to address this. As we all know, in Canada, we're suffering from a shortage of doctors, and I'm talking a deplorable shortage. You have a personal story, if you can start off by telling us where you were educated. I mean, this is a well-known institution, and it just didn't happen for you here.
My residency training, a 6-year residency training, was done in Britain, and I have the Royal College of Surgeons of Edinburgh fellowship. This was done in the early 1980s, so we're looking at about 25 years ago. Those of my colleagues who came over at that time had no difficulty getting into the Canadian system, but the doors and the requirements kept changing over the years, I think partly because of an expectation of a flood of doctors being in Canada. So by the time I came 20 years later, my qualifications are not recognized. And despite the fact that now I've sat for and passed all the exams required me of Ontario, they have not given me a practice-ready assessment.
Now, there's some big question marks, so we're gonna have to go for a break. But we keep seeing headlines pretty close to one another, which I find interesting. One type saying that we're not making use of foreign-trained doctors and we need them in our country. A more recent one that said, look, we're actually closing the doors on would-be doctors right here in Canada. They're not increasing enrollments. And the latest one is now saying a complete contradiction to the ones before, that licenses for foreign-trained MDs are on the rise. So we're going to go for a break, but when we come back, I'm going to have the two of you address, well, who do we believe? We'll be back after this. Stay tuned.